a lot of people are they're manipulating grips, and they're also exploring with racket lengths. When they make it up to 27 inches, they kind of stop. But I'm learning from you that that wasn't always the way it was. Can you kind of give us the history around why 27 right now is sort of looked at as the maximum, and how was that different from in the past?
I mean, my assumption is, back in the older days, the rackets were heavy. The materials were heavy, so you couldn't really go and make a really light racket. So if you add length to something that is heavy, it becomes very difficult to maneuver it.
Sure.
To swing it around, you need a lot of mass. You need to be tall and big and strong. So that's probably where the limitation, kind of the 27, ended up being. That's the right length. Anything longer than that is already too hard to maneuver, right? So in the late 90s and the early 2000s, actually, and most people probably don't know it, the top players in the world, the Spanish Armada, the South Americans, the Swedish, back then was a lot of top Swedish players. For the most part, a lot of them played longer rackets. When I say longer, I don't mean quarter inch. They played 28 inches. Michael Chang, the Serena Williams, Venus Williams, they all used 28-inch racket. So they were great. They were super successful. Marcelo Rios, who wasn't the tallest player, used 28-inch rackets. The problem back then, it could be used on that super high level of play because they were strong enough and skilled enough to kind of match the length with that weight, right?
Sure.
Because back then everybody used to play pretty heavy. So, these successful players used 28 inches, so the manufacturers would go and make 28 inches for the public. And a lot of people got kind of tennis elbows, they couldn't handle the combination of the weight and the length.
Yeah.
Well, back then, the technology didn't allow to say, well, let's make the racket light. So what did they do? They went kind of backed away from the 28 inches back to 27 since the rackets were still heavy.
Yeah.
Since then, so the 28-inch kind of little bit disappeared. And since then, basically, the technology now allows for rackets to be lighter and still very high performance type of frame. So I always felt kind of, why wouldn't we explore going back to longer rackets? And it could be 27 and a quarter, 27 and a half, and it could be, 28 inches. If you notice, me working with Solinko, and those guys are amazing because they listen and they kind of implement what the advice, not just me, but other people is. So if you go online, you're going to see, they make 28-inch racket. It's not a racket for everyone, but it allows you to say, well, let me explore it.
So how do you think about who needs the longer racket? Because in my head, as you're talking, I'm thinking of proportionally. I look at John Isner. Well, you would think he would need a longer racket because he's a taller guy, and then somebody that's short might need a shorter racket. But then the flip could be true. Maybe the shorter player needs the longer racket to get the reach, and the taller player, it almost feels like a 27-inch racket's like a ping pong paddle. So how do you think about who needs the longer racket and who needs the shorter racket?
It's a great way you put it, and the great way you look at it, because it's not just, you are taller, you need, longer racket. Because for that exact reason.
You may not need reach.
John Isner, for example, he does play with longer racket, or when he played half-inch longer because it was more proportionate to his body, right? However, Riley Opelka, who is an obviously amazing player, he cannot go to longer racket because it's hard. He gets jammed too much because his reach is so big that he doesn't need the rackets to help him. However, if you play at him, the longer racket almost prevents him to get around. So in his case, for example, the longer racket just doesn't work at all. In general, I almost feel tennis rackets should be longer than 27 inches. Like if you ask me, I would make all of them 27 and a quarter. 27 and
Why
a
is
quarter.
that?
It just somehow it works. It just adds to the younger players, the older players. You go from 17 to 19 to, all the way up to 27. since you were, 5 years old, and now you are 11 and you are at 27, and that's it.
Forever.
And you stop forever. Regardless, you are still 5 foot nothing, and and then you might be 6'5" or even more, and it doesn't grow with you. So I still think that people should explore the longer rackets, right? It also depends on how you play and all that stuff. So you can kind of say, let's keep going to 29, because it could be too much. You could be in your own way. We've tested it, when I would go to a friend of mine in New York who is he's in his mid-40s, play always with his very traditional, head prestige heavy rackets, but he's in phenomenal shape. He's one of the best movers on a tennis court I've ever seen. So I kind of said, prove me wrong. So I made him 29-inch frame. Marion Bartoli, who won Wimbledon, she used to play 29 inches because she played both, two hands on both sides, so it kind of made sense.
Oh, yeah.
So I would make it for my friend and basically say, prove me wrong that longer rackets work better. And in his case, it worked better.
Because he can move.
Because he can move. So he can get out of his own way. So you have to be a phenomenal mover. So even the shots that I told him, well, it's going to help you here, and here, but then when you're at the net, you're going to get jammed. He wasn't, because he can move. If you are a little bit slower feet, you are not the best mover, you're going to be jammed with that extreme 29-inch. The 27 and a quarter kind of gives you best from both worlds. It helps on the serve, it helps on the reach, but you don't really get jammed yet.
How does it help on the serve?
You have a better reach, obviously.
So it's more leverage.
More leverage, basic physics, basically. And you have a better reach. So it helps, obviously, because the court is big. So, you get there soon enough. You don't have to run that far.
Yeah.
It seems like quarter-inch shouldn't make that much of a difference.
But it does.
So
to your point, you don't think of it about bigger player needs bigger racket, little player needs little racket, or the flip of that. It's more about, can you get out of your own way?
That is correct.
And
it's
if
all
you
about
can,
footwork.
then you can explore a bigger racket. Because I was thinking about one of the players you mentioned that uses a 28-inch. And what I've always heard is this player, the way people would play this individual, and I don't want to say the name, but this person moved to the ball really well. So if you played this person wide, would get to the ball well. So that what people would do is play right at them, and they struggled to get out of the way.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So a longer racket in that case is a disadvantage.
Correct.
Because they couldn't get out of their own way.
And that's where you have to find the right balance. Because let's say it's an advantage, on the left side, it's advantage on the right side, it's advantage on the serve. But then it creates too much of a disadvantage at certain shots.
If they play hard at you.
Right at you. So, can we possibly find the perfect, middle ground? Where we go, let's say, instead of 28, what happens if we go 27 and 3/4? Does it diminish the disadvantage? The advantage is still there, but you need to find the right balance where it doesn't take away from your game on any shot.
Yeah, and so then if you're going to get all that advantage, you may just have to move your feet a little bit better.
You might have to move your feet.
And the question is, can you, right? Because not everybody can.
It's when I talk to people and they talk about certain rackets, right? And, and they said, oh, I've heard this racket and, plays this way and that way. And they almost, feel my first question is, well, how are your feet? And they go, wait a minute, I'm talking about a racket. What does that have to do with my feet? It all comes down to your feet. Me, I am a little bit older. I'm a little bit slower, to say the least, so it all comes down to my feet, right? So then the racket becomes almost, you have to match the frame that I'm playing with to my feet. I'm not fast, so can I get there? Ooh, longer racket helps me, right? But then if you play at me, I am not quick enough, so the 28-inch, I'll get jammed. So, it always comes down to your feet,
So the advantages are reach, and it helps on the serve. Are there any other advantages to the longer racket?
It's basically that stat, which is a huge advantage. The serve, you have to be a little bit careful because that's the hardest one to adjust to.
Right.
So a lot of times, even with my friend who tested a 29-inch and really liked it, the hardest thing almost was the serve because he is used to the whole life he plays tennis. So he's tossing the ball a certain way. And so he couldn't put the ball in the court. He was hitting everything, 8 feet deep, because he was tossing the ball to the same height, the same spot as with a 27-inch. So you need to adjust the toss more upfront, much higher to be able to get. Once he made that adjustment, and it took
It
a
was
few
okay.
weeks, the serve became even bigger than what he had before.
I would imagine too, because it's longer, it's going to create more leverage on the elbow.
Correct.
So I would think that that would take a bit of an adjustment period also.
Well, also what it allows, because he used to play, for example, with racket that was really heavy, like the traditional 340 grams unstrung, right?
So you go lighter but longer, and it's
We
kind of
went by
offset.
40 grams lighter because we kept the same swing weight. So even though it was 40
So
grams
27
light,
to 29, but 40 grams lighter. Equal.
yet he didn't feel the racket was lighter because the swing weight was the
Wow.
same.
Wow.
So everything has to be taken into account.
And so the benefits of those, the drawbacks are just the feet. If the feet are there, are there any other drawbacks that you see?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I really think that, if your feet are there and you can, handle it, just explore it. Doesn't mean that, and you'll probably end up stopping at some point where you're going to say, ooh, I hit a wall. I don't want any more. But I think people would be surprised how many of them would end up playing with, the 27 and a halves rather than 27s, and possibly not go to the 28, and they would say, it's too much, I don't like it anymore.
When you put a 27 and a half in your hand versus a 27, is it really easy to tell the difference? Not from a weight perspective, but is it, if I were to put it in my hand, would I go, wow, this is a lot longer? Or is it negligible?
It won't be a lot longer in the pro shop. When you look at it, you're going to say, oh, it's only half an inch. It's going to be a lot longer once you step on the court.
Start swinging it.
You start swinging it. You're going to feel it. You're going to be amazed how much more reach you have and how much easier it is. As long as you are physically able to get around the ball.
Are there any on the ground, off the ground, forehand, backhand, are there any power advantages to being longer, or it doesn't really make a difference?
It adds to everything. It gives you more power. It's just basic physics. Again, you have more leverage, so you'll get more out of the racket. Again, as long as you can, your level of the game has to be good enough to be able to handle it. Because if you are, slow, or you don't move around, you don't, you just stand there facing your opponent straight up, it becomes harder because it's harder to get the racket all the way around, to connect with the ball in front of you. So, but as long as you are, a good, solid player, you should explore it. You should definitely test it. Yes.
It adds to everything. And so are there any players that you think about that have made this switch? And you may not want to name them, but did it make a difference?
It's hard to, once you get really accomplished, because you kind of get to.
They don't like to change.
They don't like change in general, right? Mm-hmm. So, but we did, Andre, for example, Andre Agassi always explored the different length, right? Is it gonna help me? Is it not gonna help me? Does it add somewhere? Does it take away? We made a slight change when we discussed this in the past, with Djokovic. When we dropped the weight, we added a little bit to the length, just a minor 1/8 of an inch, but that's enough for him to offset the loss of the weight, to keep the swing weight the same. So even, as you get to the better players, the minor changes in length will be there. I mean, to change, at that point, go to half-inch longer will be just way too difficult, too dramatic change, yeah.
Okay. Well, it's been a great conversation. Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Hope people out there watching enjoyed it. Looking forward to the next one. So hope you'll subscribe, and see you in the next one.